Hello everyone, this is DC Pro Max from the Hackerbase. In the previous lesson, and the first lesson on JavaScript, I managed to include literally the very basics, the very foundation of JavaScript, so that in the following lessons, when we actually move on now in this lesson to examples and start really manipulating elements on the page using JavaScript, you will have a minimal foundation, minimal knowledge, and understanding of what is happening. In theory, you can even start following along with this lesson without the previous one, and you will succeed. But unfortunately, you are unlikely to fully understand everything. Therefore, I still recommend going through the first JavaScript lesson in one day, just to start grasping the basics. Because there, I even tried to introduce you to some programming or fundamentals. Not only the specific concept of JavaScript, but in general. I will be adding a lot more about JavaScript during the upcoming lessons. But in that foundation, I specifically included what we will need in the near future. And probably understanding the foundational knowledge from this lesson, from the previous lesson. That is the 80% of success. So don't be lazy and go through this lesson, which lasts 40 minutes. If you understand everything, success is guaranteed. And today we are finally approaching the most interesting part. I myself have been waiting for this lesson because we can finally work not only with the console, but with a real example. We continue to develop our site, our application. The most interesting part begins. Let's go. Well guys, here's our site, our application. In the last lesson on the JavaScript basics, I connected the JavaScript file basics. Why do I recommend taking this lesson? Because at least you will know how to connect scripts. In this case, look, we will first disable this script. It's not needed. Here I decomposed the meta tags, stylish JavaScript separately, and we will start by cleaning the page. Remember, he said that thanks to JavaScript, we won't need to write all this in HTML. Look, I will delete all the posts completely, but I'll leave just the first post as an example and remove the title, and in its place, I'll just leave the comment empty as an example. All this means that we will be inserting using JavaScript. It's better to put everything here, like on paste from JS. There, as a hint, we remove this, we remove this, we remove this. Poetry indeed. This means we need to set all this up with JavaScript and these posts. Paste with JS, that's it. I left this purely for example. We can comment it out so that it doesn't bother us. That's it. Look, nothing is left except the parallax. And we can't even scroll it because we have no posts. Look, basics, JS, this position. This is all from previous lessons. I'm leaving it for now, but we don't need them anymore. So they don't bother you. I'll put them in the lessons folder. That's it. And I'll throw all of this in there. This is already called legacy code. That is, it's outdated. We don't need it. Next, I will now proceed to create a new file called newfile.main.js. This new file will serve as our main entry point, and it will be essential for the initialization of our application. JavaScript is the main file, the entry point. Naturally, the first thing we need to do is connect this file directly here. For this, we need to write a script, src, path, and remember, we start from the root, as always, and specify main.js. That's it, we've connected our script. Why do I insist on going through it? The 40-minute lesson, the first one at least, to see how I do all of this. There I talk a lot about how to work with the console. The console is your best friend for a long time. The lesson is somewhat quiet and engaging. I can't say it's colorful as well. So what do we want to do first? First, we want to add our title. You will paste with JS. What do we need to do for this? We close the unnecessary. In main.js, we need to access this element using JavaScript. And now, remember, in JavaScript there are so-called selectors. Just like the entire USSR is not the same as JavaScript itself. Let's say we define a variable const title. It is static for us, so we use const instead of let for title. Let's start, like a better home. We will start the variable with the name home. Title. Why is home a document object? The module includes everything, all the elements that are part of both JavaScript, and it reads all of this as the DOM. That's what it's called. A document-oriented model. and the entire object of our page. I told you in some lesson that this is called a document. No? Accordingly, we need to call the object document. This is access to our entire page. Through it, we get everything. And then there is the call to the selector, core selector. There is query selector. All in JavaScript. I will write it in the comments for you. There is just query selector. I will explain the difference. We covered arrays in JavaScript in the last lesson. So query selector, all will be from your elements. For example, if we want to choose or pre the core selector, we write it like this. It will select all elements and return an array of them. That is, it will be an array of these, meaning it will return a list of all, and accordingly, we will need to choose this one later. And if we want to select the first element, we will need to 0. Like this, for this purpose, they came up with a smart selector. It's simply called query selector. It selects the first element here. For example, if you choose query selector, it will select the first element on the page, that is 1A. But this is all theory. We need to select, we only have one ID, which is title. Naturally, we don't need query selector all because we only need to select one. We select through query selector, writing it just like in CSS with a hash and title, and we have our DOM title. And now what needs to be done is to write DOM title and access the inner text equals GTA 6. But the text didn't work. You know why? Look, we connected JavaScript. If we open the console, so it tells us that it's impossible to set this property for null, meaning it can't read this selector. And why can't it read it? Because initially, look, inside the head, everything works synchronously, styles are connected, then JavaScript, and only then the entire page is rendered. And accordingly, at this stage, JavaScript can't see it. It doesn't see it. For it, the page hasn't loaded yet, which is why it doesn't see this element, because it's synchronous. But there is a magical attribute. It's called defer. You see, everything has loaded for us, which means defer loads JavaScript only after the HTML page has been rendered. That is, it waits until all of this appears on the page figuratively, and then it loads the script. Therefore, we can write it like this. Not can, but need to use defer. Well, or the old school way, which is without defer. But I don't like doing that. We take the script and move it to the end of the body. That is, the page has been rendered. You see, everything is rendered synchronously in order. That's it. It sees it here. But I don't like that. It's better to do it nicely. Defer. Okay. Got it. Look, if, for example, so GTA 6, we wrote it. Now, we need to write the title. This is PSGs. Let it be. We need to write the titles of our pages. Now we move on to our query selector all. Const. Let's define them as link elements. Link elements. Query selector all. We need to, since we want to select all the links, here are the same selectors as everything else with 1, 1. And it will give us a list if we write it in the console. Console. Debug. I'll write link elements. I'll open the console. You see, in the console in debug, here I connected verbose. It outputs, but for the sake of it, it found our 22A elements. So this is how we can debug. You saw it. Gets removed. We don't need this. It's purely for demonstration purposes. And look further, since this is an array. That is, it gave us an array of all, and we can change it. 1. Link elements. Select the first value. I showed you, this is the first element of the array we select. Inner text equals, what was it there? Services, I think. To services. By the way, don't forget to put semicolons, because in most projects they need to be placed in the majority. And the first element I want to set there, what was it? Services about, I think. Or the other way around. Right now, it doesn't matter. Or I think it was like this. About, and then services, yes. You see, we inserted all this using JavaScript. It doesn't look very nice. I'll show you a more interesting way. I'll comment this out, let it be. I'll show you an interesting way. It's called destructuring. How can we make this look nice? Since link elements is an array consisting of two A elements, meaning they are in the list A, and we have two elements, that's how the array is composed. We can destructure it. We write our variable, const. We open the array brackets, let's say, first, node. I'll write for demonstration purposes. Second, node. That is the first node of the element. They are called nodes in JavaScript. And it equals the reference to our array link elements. What this means is that we have destructured it. It's the same as if you... Remember, this is a very convenient thing. You will use it constantly. This way we have access to the first A element to the second one. Got it, right? So we have these A elements and we have destructured them. Roughly speaking, first node is the same as link elements with index 0 and our second node as link elements number 1. If we add third node here, it will return undefined because we don't have a third element in the array. Got it, right? So there's no need. And as a consequence, we can change the first node, dot, like it. Inner text equals about if it is deemed necessary, right? And similarly for second node, just services. And we can even directly specify the variable names as about link, service, link. Then it's really beautiful. You see how readable it is. Everything is simple. Everything comes together beautifully. The beauty turned out to be incredible. Yes, you saw the difference. QWERTY selector, simply, and QWERTY selector. All QWERTY selector. All returns an array with all the elements we requested. If we specify div here, we can even do it out of curiosity. Let's print to the console how many divs it will take. Div elements. QWERTY selector all div. Console. Debug here. So div elements. Let's put it on. See how many we have. .3D found for you. What we have a div title it found after all. And right in it there are properties because it found its ID all of us. Also with JavaScript we can extract everything from HTML elements. For you to understand, in other programming languages, for example in Java for Android or in Swift with UIKit, it happens the same way. The entire application you see, the user interface, is also generated in code. Everything is inserted. So it is identical. If you understand these basics, then accordingly, everything will be clear. And later on, if you ever want to switch to mobile, imperative programming style. And if we want, just like in CSS, for example, to access a div that is specifically inside the header, we can write it like this. You see, it returned one div now. That is specifically the one in the header. Everything is one-to-one, just like in CSS. They did it really cool. There is a legacy version. Back in the day when I was still studying, I remember there was getDocumentById. Instead of query selector, there was something called getDocumentById. This is the legacy version, but it's inconvenient. Not as elegant as query selector, which is just beautiful, so just know what it is. If you see it somewhere, when I leave it there, it's purely for you to debug, so you can look at it yourself. Des, Rakteng. Assignment is called destructuring or destructive assignment. The most interesting part is coming up next. Let's try to set up one post generated purely with JavaScript. Here we have, since I commented it out, we have our post 1. We need to insert a post, let's say like this, purely with JavaScript. What needs to be done for this? First of all, where are we going to insert the post? We are going to insert the post into this container. Accordingly, to manipulate inside this container, we need to access this container. Well, I'll write it down. Let's say our ID will be at the very top, the DOM container. It is very important to choose the right names because if we just label a container as a container and then another container appears, we won't understand. And by the way, here is exactly a DOM error, link elements. You see right here, to understand that this is specifically DOM, that's it, immediately corrected myself. So here we corrected to container since we need only one container. Look, roughly speaking, the container, if we used query select all, the container. And we would have to do it this way because it would still return an array with one element. This is identical because the electronic immediately highlights the first element from the array for us. That's how it is. By the way, further, what we need to do, let's try to insert something into this container. Document container now. Here I will separate, add, post. To divide all our logic, this is a post with links. DOM. Reference. Look at everything in JavaScript. You can not only get references to an element, but also generate them right here. Let's first generate a div, post, div, DOM, post, div, const. Always use const if this variable will not change. That is, if you plan to change this variable, const, DOM, post, div. Let's write it like that. And document again creates element, div. This command means we want to create a div. You'll understand everything now. What else do we have inside? We have an h2 inside. House, post, h2. That's how it will be. h2. Home post div. Don't give it better. You know how we'll do it. DOM, post, title. So that it's clear what this is. So it's understandable. And here, DOM post div container. Because this is a container according to Stas. Then look further. What I realized is that this structure here is not needed. We can do it differently here. Overhead is, but I wrote too much for this parent div. Light team. I'll delete this here. This will be enough for us like this. Like this. That's it. This will be sufficient. Such a structure. So next I need to add a P. DOM post description in P. We have a description abbreviated as desk. This is P. Next, look. In H2 we need to insert this text. House post title. Inner text, just like there, we inserted equals like this. Then we need to insert the description. DOM post. DOM post desk inner box. Text equals copies this text. We need to move everything to one line. Okay? Everything is there. We generated everything needed for the post. We generated it all. We wrote the value for the container. My title desk. Now all this needs to be organized and inserted correctly with each other. Let's first organize these elements inside the post div. Here we have the DOM post container. We need to insert there h2 append child. Insert title. Done. Next we need to insert there. Oh, there's a mistake here. In the DOM we need to insert the description here. Always watch out for such syntactic errors. They seem minor, but can ruin your work. We inserted everything needed into the post. Now I'll separate. Here. We just did this, we did this using JavaScript. Here's such a block. Now what do we need to do? Insert it into the main container. Here's the DOM container. Also, append child itself. DOM post container, because our container is ready and everything is already inserted there. Look, we've inserted everything. But what are we missing? Here we're missing, since we styled it, we're missing that. Here's how to style light with light him. What mechanism exists for this? To add a class, it's preferable to do this at the very beginning. Yes, when we have defined all these elements, we will insert it immediately. Class. House post container. We can set a class. Class list from some of our liked him. You all see. We all gave him from CSS properties. here? Well, we have our post. We inserted GTA here. We inserted links, the title tag, inner text. Everything is in place. I'll move this here. So we have it all together. At the very beginning, like this, I'll write it here. It's very important. Remember, it's very important. Everything in the right places, everything decomposed, so it's not all mixed up. I watched some lessons on the internet that appeared under my videos. I was just shocked by how they teach. Not all, of course, but very many. Just like I learned because I watched such lessons. They put everything into one file. CSS, JavaScript, HTML, inline styles. They write in HTML. It's terrible. I learned the same way and then I couldn't. It's understandable during an interview, wondering what they want from me, or when I came to my first job, why don't they like everything in one file? That's why comments are very important. I always write comments in the code and for myself. So we created everything, absolutely, with JavaScript, and let's probably do something else because it will be important in the future. When we receive responses from the server, we will be getting images from there, and accordingly, we will need to insert images using JavaScript. We have a link somewhere. Let's copy it. And here we'll remove the image. All right, the image is removed. Let's return to our Java script where we have the image, where we actually wanted to insert it, and where it is currently inserted. Since we have one block class, we can use the query selector. So now, const house post what is it called? So that it's post image block set. Let it be like that. Document query selector. We just need post image block. That's what it's called. Yes, exactly. And look, we removed this background image from C2. Let's comment out the questions. Okay, comment it out. Now, we don't have an image. In JavaScript, it's quite easy to do. DOM post image block. We already have a reference to this element. .pom style. We are accessing the CSS styles. And in this way, we can completely change any styles using JavaScript. Background. If you need to know which styles to apply or which specific property to write, you can always ask the chat. Ask GPT, for example, how to do this with style in JavaScript, for instance, and write all the styles as needed using JavaScript. And if you don't remember, since we had it very clearly there, we can actually copy it, URL. We just need to open here, single quotes, put everything, voila. So I definitely didn't, yes, that's it. We inserted an image using JavaScript, and you can write absolutely all styles. That's it. All our content is completely generated using JavaScript. More precisely, not the content, but the data for it. I'll leave this for you so you can see what the structure should be. What we create in JavaScript. Also here, paste. The background image. This is an image with JavaScript. And here I'll write. Well guys, I think this lesson is enough for you to play around and manipulate HTML markup. Well, in the next lesson, we will insert a whole list of posts and I'll show you the modular structure. JavaScript should really be covered in a separate lesson. As you can see, this lesson was already much more interesting. Now, with the help of JavaScript, we can generate all of this. Awesome. That is, you are literally controlling the page. And in the upcoming lessons, compared to HTML and CSS, things will get cooler and cooler. With each new lesson, we will handle different events on the page, like clicks. I will also show you how to create light and dark themes, and everything else. All of this in the upcoming lessons. This was DC Pro Max from HackerBase with you. Be sure to subscribe to the private HackerBase channel, although it is still open for now. If you manage to join soon, then you're in luck, because I publish a lot of exclusive punning content there, and also answer questions. You can chat with me there. I will help find errors in your code, give advice. In general, we have quite a lively community gathering there. To access the HackerBase, you need to scan this QR code or the link to the HackerBase bot in the description will add you to the necessary group, or rather direct you to the right page, and of course the sandbox. I will attach all this code with a link in the description. You can access it directly from the browser and view this code, interact with it. If you need to copy something, copy paste and so on, which is very convenient. I provide such a sandbox with each lesson. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next lesson. Adieu. Join the HackerBase channel on Telegram, and I'll tell you how to build a successful career and hack this system.